A very good morning, all of you. I welcome you all to Ansarkari, and I hope that you must be doing fine. So let's start with today's news analysis that is going to be for 12th of March 2023. So let's analyze the Sunday's edition. So we'll be looking into topics like red hot summer in store for Kerala, so effective climate change and heat wave like conditions. Apart from that, wives do discovered they were gay, so talking about homosexuals. Apart from that, let's start with today's analysis. So net direct tax receipts, they rise by 16.8 percentage and they are near the budget target. So these are the net direct tax receipts. So understanding this pictograph, talking about the tax flows, the chart shows corporate and income tax collections in the past year. And as of 10th of March, the growth in the income tax collections outpaced the corporate tax flows. So here we can understand the level and compare these two. Income tax is in blue and corporate is in red. So you can say most of the time period when here the blue line was not like, the revenue from the income tax was not increasing much, but we can say that there is a higher amount of fluctuations, there is higher amount of volatility when we talk about the corporate tax revenues. And you can see how it is like moving in a kind of a similar fashion, that it increased and then it sharply falls again, it sharply increased and sharply fell. And however, there is less volatility when we talk about the income tax revenues. But right now, when we compare the levels between both of them, the income tax revenues, they stand higher than the corporate tax revenues. So you can see that blue line, the point where it is ending, it is higher than the point where the red line is ending. So that is one takeaway. What this is one of the most important, because most of the time we feel that it is the corporate tax revenues which are always higher than the income tax revenues. But right now the situation is opposite. So the net direct tax revenues receipts, they have rose by 16.8% to touch rupees 13.73 lakh crores. And this reflects a slight dip in the growth over the past month, but reaching within striking distance of the budget target for this fiscal. And the uptick in the net personal income tax collections continued to outstrip the corporate income tax flows, rising 20.7%. So here when we talk about the lost childhood, so child labor, you need to be knowing about what the important articles in constitution, what are the fundamental rights against that, what are the different laws that we have in India regarding same, and do like the DPSPs or fundamental duties talk about the prevention of or the prohibition of child labor or not. So that becomes important. And here we're talking about the Odisha police work on introducing the new strictures to ensure that brick kilns owners, they do not employ children and ensure education for them. So this is a case study from Odisha. And despite the fact that child labor it is banned and the right to education is guaranteed as per the Indian Constitution, we see that most often in brick kilns, they have long ignored the law and aided by inadequate enforcement by the Labor Department and others. So now we're seeing that Bhubaneswar Cuttack Police Commissionerate, whose primary responsibility is to maintain law and order, they have stepped in, taking up the additional task of collaborating with the labor, school and mass education and women and child development departments to ensure that essential entitlements reach these marginalized communities. Moving forward, sickle cell screening meets only 1% of the target, hurting ambitious elimination goal. So here talking about anemia. So sickle cell disease, it is a genetic condition that affects estimated 15 lakh people in India. So the health ministry is working on maintaining a central registry of sickle cell disease patients, and ministry plans to screen 7 crore people in 17 highly affected states by 2025, and 1 crore screening has been scheduled for 2022-23. And so far, we see that a little over 1 lakh persons have been screened so far. And India seeks to eliminate the sickle cell disease, or we can say anemia, by 2047. So that is the year when we'll be completing 100 years of independence. Moving forward, all these are political news, not important for us. So can't let the temples of democracy be sullied, says our vice president. So he attacked Congress leader for his comments regarding the microphones of the opposition leaders being turned off in the parliament, saying that there cannot be a bigger lie in such lie to set a narrative. He said that such a thing was done during the black chapter of emergency, but it is not possible now. And temples of democracy, that is, he's talking about the parliament, they cannot be allowed to be outraged, adding that some people are trying to undermine the achievements of the country due to their short sightedness. And democratic values are important, and we cannot allow the temples of democracy to be outraged, as we are the mother of democracy. So, India is referred to as the mother of democracy, and there cannot be a bigger lie when someone tries to set a narrative by saying that in the biggest panchayat, the parliament mics are switched off. So this is Vice President of India, who is the ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha. And you need to find out about which article talks about him. So lines between natural and man-made disasters are blurred in Joshimath. So in this picture, you can see the project, the hydropower project, which is the Tapovan Vishnugad hydropower project. It is being stalled, and people in past, they built eco-friendly houses by not touching the slopes or disturbing the water channels. What is being witnessed today is the luxurious interference instead of the peaceful coexistence, says the Secretary of Disaster Management in Uttarakhand. So these are the keywords that earlier people used to, whenever they were used to like construct their houses or there was any project, they were eco-friendly, they were sustainable in nature, and they did not basically went into disturbing the water channels or hampering the natural landscape around them. But today we are seeing reckless development irrespective of the changes that are being done to the natural environment there. So we are seeing luxurious interference instead of peaceful coexistence. And obviously we are seeing the impacts, the consequences of it today. So yesterday we also talked about that our prime minister was talking about the importance of the local techniques when it comes to like construction of houses. So we need to identify them and then implement them as per the scientific analysis is done, so as to prevent loss of life in future if there is any case in there is any type of disaster in future. So Supreme Court says that a committee would be there to oversee the transfer and import of captive wild animals. And Supreme Court has increased the jurisdiction and powers of a high-powered committee, which would be led by its former judge, and who is Justice Deepak Verma, to conduct necessary checks and undertake fact-finding exercises concerning the import, transfer, procurement, rescue, and rehabilitation of wild animals, including those in captivity. And the ambit of the committee was earlier restricted to Tripura and Gujarat. Now the chief wildlife wardens of the states, they would be co-opted as members of the committee, and the panel would look into all the pending and the future complaints on the issue. So committee may also consider the request for approval, dispute, or grievance concerning the transfer or import into India or procurement or welfare of wild animals by any rescue or rehabilitation center or zoo, by taking assistance and cooperation whenever needed from all the departments and authorities across India. So the court directed that the state and the central authorities, they should forthwith report the seizure of wild animals or abandonment of captive wild animals to the committee, and the committee shall be at liberty to recommend the transfer of the ownership of the captive animals or of seized wild animals to any willing rescue center or zoo for their immediate welfare, care, and rehabilitation. And other members of the committee would include the Director General of Forest, head of the project Elephant Division, and the member secretary to the Central Zoo Authority of India. So Lockheed Martin and Tata, they are going to begin a fighter wing production in collaboration, in cooperation. And US defense major Lockheed Martin and the Tata Group, they have reached an agreement to produce fighter wings at their joint venture, Tata Lockheed Martin Aerostructures Limited in Hyderabad. And we have signed a memorandum of understanding regarding the same, where we'll be producing 29 fighter wing shipsets with an option of additional shipsets and deliveries commencing in 2025. So that is one of the joint ventures in the defense sector. So we have talked about the sickle cell disease, and also one of the newspapers we have talked in detail about anemia. Why do we call these cells to be sickle cell, and what are the normal cells? What is the difference between the normal cells and the sickle cells? So all of that we have already discussed, and it is definitely it is a genetic disorder, genetic blood disorder, I should say. So states demand that lightning should be declared as a natural disaster. So a few states, they have demanded that lightning, it should be declared as a natural disaster because deaths caused by it surpass any other disaster in the country. And the National Disaster Management Authority member secretary, he basically said this, and Mr. Kishore said that it was a policy issue and deliberations were required regarding the same. And according to the present norms, cyclone, drought, earthquake, fire, flood, tsunami, hailstorm, landslip, avalanche, cloudburst, pest attack, frost, and cold waves, they are considered as disasters that are covered under the State Disaster Response Fund, 75% of which it is funded by the center. And these observations were made on two-day national platform for disaster risk reduction conference. And yesterday we also talked about it. And apart from that, the frequency of lightning, it was the highest in northeastern states and in West Bengal, Sikkim, Jharkhand, Odisha, and Bihar. But the number of deaths, they were higher in Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, and Odisha. So the lightning characteristics, they are different for different regions, and the prevalence is more at night and the early hours in the hilly states and more during the day in the plain areas. So that is why death occur more in the plains, because it happens during the daytime. So COVID numbers are again ticking up, and we also saw that H3N2 cases are also increasing at the same time. So center seeks more vigilance at this particular time period when we are again seeing an uptake in the COVID cases. So government asks states, union territories to carry out integrated surveillance of the respiratory pathogens, take stock of the hospital preparedness, calls for test, track, treat, vaccination, and appropriate behavior. So it would be rather more safe if you start wearing your mask whenever you're like going outside and visiting any public space, and also maintain social distancing. So basically, amid a rise in the cases of the seasonal influenza subtype H3N2, the center on Saturday expressed concern over a gradual increase in COVID-19 positivity rate in some states. And obviously, we needed to be promptly addressing these cases. So right now, the cases that were recorded were 456 on Saturday. So scientist with claims on superconductivity kicks up another row. So we saw that the Physics Journal Physical Review Letters launched an investigation into a June 2021 paper, which was co-authored among others by Ranga Dice, following allegations of data manipulation in the same week that Dice and others reported in a different journal that they had discovered room temperature superconductivity in a material compressed by a few thousand atmospheres of pressure. And this claim has thrust Dr. Dice of the University of Rochester and his colleagues back into the spotlight, where they have been before for claiming the discovery of the superconductivity in a similar circumstances in uranium in 2009 and carbonaceous sulfur hydride in 2020. So they've been accused of data manipulation. So let's see whether that's true or not. And two cheetahs, they've been released into the Kuno National Park, which is there in Madhya Pradesh. So they've been named Auburn, and Asha. They were released into the wild at the Kuno National Park, and that is after almost 6 months. They were brought from Namibia. So as of now, they were into, we can say, into territory, and they were under supervision. So Ukraine MP says that Moscow has no monopoly on Soviet ties and Kyiv is a friend of India too. So this is from a Ukrainian MP. So Russia cannot claim a monopoly on the relationships of the Soviet Union, says a Ukrainian member of parliament, who hopes India's position on the war of Ukraine will evolve to one that is more supportive of Kyiv. So right now we know about what has been India's stand so far as the Russia-Ukraine war is concerned. We have tried to maintain a balance between the West and obviously West, I'm saying West because West is supporting Ukraine, and between Russia. So Sahitya Academy Award winners feted at the Festival of Letters. So 24 writers across as many as Indian languages were honored with the Sahitya Academy Award 2022. And Hindi author Badri Narayan and English writer Anuradha Roy, they were among those who received the prestigious literary award at a ceremony held at Kamani Auditorium on the inaugural day of the literary festival. So you can go ahead and read about more of the awardees. So Indonesia's Merapi volcano erupts, covering villages in smoke and ash. So Indonesia's Mount Merapi, one of the world's most active volcanoes, erupted on Saturday, spewed out smoke and ash that blanketed the villages near the crater, and there were no immediate reports of casualties. So that is there, and you need to find out about which type of volcano it was. Apart from that, what are the impacts of a volcanic eruption on the environment? Which kind of gases are released and how are they harmful, and what kind of impact do they have on the surrounding environment? So Iran says that it has reached a deal to buy the Russian Sukhoi fighter jets, and it has finalized a deal for the same for buying Sukhoi Su-35 fighter jets from Russia. The Air Force of the sanctions hit Iran has an aging fleet of aircraft, and it has struggled to acquire spare parts to keep its warplanes in the air. So training in Russia, USS that Mr. Kimberley maintained that Iranian pilots, they had reportedly been learning to fly the Sukhoi warplanes in Russia, and that Tehran may receive the aircraft within the next year, which would significantly strengthen Iran's air force relative to its regional neighbors. And right now, Iran has mostly Russian MiG and Sukhoi fighter jets that date back to the Soviet era, as well as some Chinese aircraft, including F-7, and some American F-4 and F-5 fighter jets dating back to before the 1979 Islamic Revolution are also a part of its fleet. And Wagner chief says that the Russian fighters, they are close to central Bakhmut. So they're already taken the control of eastern Bakhmut territories, and now they are very near to the central Bakhmut areas. So we've been talking about these developments every day. So world's fastest camera confirms how flames form soot. So scientists from Germany and the US, they have built the world's fastest single-shot laser camera, which is 1000x faster than its predecessors at capturing extremely short-lived events. And they use the camera to provide the most precise view of how A hydrocarbon flame produces soot, which can teach us about how this important climate pollutant is produced in the kitchen stoves, car engines, and wildfires. So the device's technique is called the laser sheet compressed ultra fast photography, which is LSCAP, and it can resolve a plane of a three-dimensional object like a flame or spray or any turbid media and can resolve physical or the chemical processes. And according to their paper, they found that strong experimental evidence in support of the theory and modeling of soot inception and growth mechanism in flames. So such evidence can validate the model that predicts soot formation in the industrial processes. Soot changes the rainfall patterns and melts the glaciers faster. So no neutralizing antibodies after Japanese encephalitis vaccination, and a small trial in vaccinated children in Gorakhpur district has found seroprotection against the virus decreased sharply in fully vaccinated children. So Chinese vaccine confers low protection from the infection, and a study was carried out in 6 villages in Gorakhpur district. So the study looked for neutralizing antibodies IgG in children of different ages post vaccination, and we saw that nearly 98% of the children who received the vaccine did not have any antibodies against the virus. So the cell mediated immune response also need to be studied before concluding the protective effect of the Chinese vaccine regarding Japanese encephalitis. So you need to be knowing about T cells and the B cells in our body and what is their role. Apart from that, there's nothing much important for us here. So cases of diabetes, high blood cholesterol rising globally. So the number of type 2 diabetes cases worldwide grew by more than 1.5% annually between 2000 and 2019. And in 2019, obesity and high blood cholesterol levels killed 5 million and 4.3 million people, respectively. It is more difficult to estimate the death rates than the study makes it seem. And people are eating unhealthy food, obviously, because of our lifestyle. These are also called lifestyle diseases. So because of eating unhealthy food with less exercise, income inequality exacerbates the burden of metabolic diseases, with people in low to middle income countries bearing the brunt of it. So these are the main factors and the evil effects of deforestation. So WHO points out that since 1990, 420 million hectares of forest they have been lost through conversion to other land uses such as agriculture, industrial use, and biofuels in order to feed 11 billion humans by the end of this century. And this will in particular affect the tropical regions such as India, China, and Africa. So causes of global warming, the Food and Agriculture Organization has published the Global Forest Resources Assessment, and it points out that 31% of the land on Earth is covered by forest. When trees they are felled, they lead to accumulation of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and hence global warming. So deforestation increases 11% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, and some of those greenhouse gases are also mentioned here. So this is also very important for us to keep in mind. And 1% increase in deforestation leads to 0.93% decrease in the availability of clean drinking water in rural communities. Talking about the situation in India, so the total forest cover in India is about 8 lakh square kilometers, which is almost 22% of the total geographical area of the country. And of these, the twin islands of Andaman and Nicobar, they have 87% of the total area under forest. And during colonial British times, they set up port there, and that was in order to export timber elsewhere. So the present government is also targeting these islands in order to expand its navy and also to attract more mainlanders to not just visit but even settle down here. So much for saving these islands. And the Himalayan states of Jammu and Kashmir, Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, they have about respectively different areas has been given for them for their forest area. And yet the government of India has removed a significant fraction of trees in order to build underpass and overpass highways in these regions. Likewise, Goa has about 2,219 square kilometer of forestation, yet the government there has cut trees with the idea of connecting Mumbai to Goa by a 4-lane highway. And in this context, we have also talked about the compensatory afforestation fund scheme and the challenges that it is facing. The funds are not being utilized, and another challenge includes the quality of land. So it is not easy as it seems to be. So giant banyan trees. Likewise, the National Highways Authority of India is set to start the expansion of 45-kilometer stretch of NH 163 from 2 to 4 lanes. And towards this, they want to destroy 9,000 banyan trees in the Telangana state. So these giant banyan trees, they are centuries old, established by the Nizams and other forest loving groups. So in sum, these are some of the evil effects of deforestation, and we should definitely protest or come out with a sustainable solution. So how is Bengal tackling with the fatal viral infection? Basically, we're talking about H3N2 cases. So why are infants dying in West Bengal government hospitals? Why is virus strain sweeping the state? Why are children under 5 with low or compromised immunity at the higher risk? And we also talk about the problem or the challenge of undernutrition in India? And is the state's health infrastructure stretched too thin? So again, the challenges of the health sector, the public health sector, even the private health sector would be highlighted because of this incidence. So here we are seeing the rising adenovirus infection cases in West Bengal. So the Center for Disease Control and Prevention of United States government states that adenoviruses, they are common viruses that typically cause mild cold or flu-like illnesses and are usually spread from an infected person to others by close personal contact. So the virus is transmitted through the air by coughing and sneezing and by touching an object or surface with adenoviruses on it. So while the virus, it can affect people of any age group, children with low and compromised immunity, they are at a higher risk. And symptoms of it includes common cold, flu-like symptoms. You can feel like acute bronchitis, pneumonia, and pink eye, and acute gastroenteritis. So these are some of the other symptoms of the disease, and it is a recombinant strain of human adenovirus type 3 and type 7 that is causing the majority of infections in the state. So there are different strains which are prevalent, and talking about the West Bengal's health infrastructure. So with a spike in the viral infections, children from different districts of Bengal, they were admitted to 2 pediatric institutions in Kolkata, and these referrals were made by the district level primary and the tertiary care units. And in some cases, family members brought the children to these facilities directly without any referrals. So any advisory that was issued by the state health department directed that no pediatric ARI care cases, they should be referred to Kolkata without the knowledge of the medical superintendents of the hospitals. The beds were augmented, and because of the rising number of cases, government claims that there are more than 5,000 beds in 121 hospitals in the state having facilities for the management of the pediatric ARIs with 600 pediatricians in place. And to deal with the situation, the government announced the setting up of 5 additional pediatric hubs. So is there a link between comorbidities and the infant mortality? So infant mortality in West Bengal stands at 22 per live 1,000 births, and under 5 year, the mortality rate is 25.4. So the figures, they are better than the national average. So talk about the national average. So the infant mortality in India is 35.2 and under 5 mortality rate stands at 41.9. But when it comes to the nutritional status of the children, the state does not fare so well. So here the problem is of undernutrition. And when we talk about stunting, wasting, so all of that comes in here. And as we go by the figures of the National Family Health Survey 5, it shows that children in West Bengal under 5 years who are stunted, basically they have less height for their age is 33.8%, and children under 5 years who are underweight is 32.2%. So this is almost similar to the national average. And maternal health is also a crucial factor, and the studies, they have shown that if a mother is underweight, her child has an increased risk of stunting, wasting, and being born underweight. Then we have the problem of child marriages. There is high prevalence of anemia, and the public health reports suggest that the poor maternal health as well as the child marriages results in underweight babies and the absence of adequate health infrastructure in districts to treat the severe ARI cases in turn creates a vicious circle. So we have already discussed a lot about the cryptocurrencies and some of the changes that are being done by the government. And we've also talked about like what steps were taken by the government of India in the past. Here you can like find out about what are the NFTs, non-fungible tokens, what is the Financial Intelligence Unit of India. So this is basically central agency is responsible for receiving, processing, analyzing, and disseminating information related to the suspicious financial transactions to the law enforcement agencies and overseas FIUs. So that's there. And so here, when we talk about the regulation in other countries, so according to PwC's Global Crypto Regulations Report 2023, a large proportion of the countries, they are at various stages of drafting the regulations around the cryptos, and most countries have already brought digital assets under the anti-money laundering laws, which India is doing now. So Singapore, Japan, Switzerland, and Malaysia, they already have legislations on the regulatory framework of cryptos. US, UK, Australia, Canada, they have initiated the plans on regulating. So far, China, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, they have issued a blanket ban on cryptocurrency. So China, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, complete ban on cryptos. And European Union is also preparing a cross-jurisdictional regulatory and supervisory framework for the crypto assets. So the framework seeks to provide legal clarity, consumer and investor protection, and market integrity while promoting innovation in the digital assets. So these are the keywords here. So UK's new policy on refugees. Why have the UN Refugee Agency and the European Union criticized the illegal migration bill? And does it breach the norms of international law or not? And what prompted UK government to initiate such a move? What deal did Rwanda and UK sign in 2022? So the conservative government of the UK is proposing to adopt a new stricter policy to deal with the asylum seekers who arrive on the island via the boat. So government has taken this step to fulfill a promise that was made in January 2023 by the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to stop the boats. So it was among the 5 key policy priorities he outlined at the time, and the proposed plan to deport to origin or remove asylum seekers arriving in the UK by boat to a third country has been sharply criticized by the UN Refugee Agency, United Nations Human Rights Commission, and by leaders of the European Union as well. So they have argued that this new policy on refugees is incompatible with the international law, specifically the 1951 Convention relating to the status of refugees and the European Convention on Human Rights. But this bill is yet to be passed. So what is the political context for the bill? So policies to regulate the immigration, specifically of the undocumented workers and asylum seekers, have always been a sensitive political issue in UK as in other developed economies. So with the rise of anti-immigrant sentiments fueling some aspect of the Brexit campaign, which became reality in January 31st, 2020, UK Conservative Party has been a strong advocate for tighter immigration policies. So this is purportedly aimed at protecting UK jobs or shifting the focus to skilled workers arriving through legal routes. So what measures does the bill propose? So the bill, when it would be passed into a law by the UK Parliament, will require that the Home Secretary detain and remove those arriving in the UK illegally, either to Rwanda or another safe third country. They would deny migrants the right to bail or judicial review for the first 28 days of their immigration detention, would only allow migrants who are minors, medically unfit to fly, or are at risk of serious harm in the country of their removal to delay their departure from the UK. So these are the things. And what is the trend on refugee numbers? So the figure for the arrivals in small boats across the English Channel was 45,755 in 2022. This is the highest number since records began in 2018. And the so-called small boat arrivals comprised approximately 45% of the total asylum applications made in 2022 in UK. So is the bill really consistent with the human rights law or not? So there was more than 50% chance that the new bill is incompatible with the international law, and this is most salient in the concept of non-refoulement. So you need to find out about what is this concept of non-refoulement, which is an idea encapsulated in the Refugee Convention as well as the ECHR, to which the UK is a signatory, that refugees, they should not be returned to a country where they face threats to life and their liberty. So in this context, it is expected that the bill will be challenged in the courts and might fail on the grounds of inconsistency with the human rights law. So however, the UK court, it recently ruled that Rwanda deportation plan did not violate any human rights conventions. So India, Australia, they eye stronger ties in critical mineral fields. India has a scarcity of critical minerals, so we need to be clear with what do we mean by critical minerals, which are used in making batteries for the electric vehicles. So one of them is definitely lithium. And Minister adds that Australia has huge reserves which they do not process and manufacture. So basically efficiently utilizing the untapped potential when we talk about the critical minerals. So India is in talks with Australia on the critical minerals which can be used in batteries for electric vehicles. So we said India has scarcity of these, and right now we are completely dependent upon imports of these. So that includes lithium and also cobalt. So majorly we are dependent upon China for these imports. So after the bank failure in US, which is the SVB Bank, the Indian SaaS firms and startups, they rushed to assess the impact of this bank failure. So this was the Silicon Valley Bank, which has failed in US, and this is one of the largest after the 2008 financial crisis. So it has not only raised the specter of wider financial contagion, but also rattled startups and the tech firms in India. So that is the impact it is kind of having. And obviously, there is no stability as of now. And now the main question is, what about the health of other banks? So one day we also talked about what is the linkage between the rate hikes by the Fed and the repo rate hikes by the RBI. So there's a direct link, irrespective of the impact the repo rate hikes in India that is has a lag. And now SBI's coach says that RBI should pause and think of decoupling from Fed. So that is what he is talking about. So India, Australia, they also agree for early conclusion of the trade pact talks. So we've been talking about India, Australia relations every day almost for the past 3 to 4 days. So what caused the Silicon Valley Bank's failure, which was in US? So Fed raises the rates. So the Federal Reserve has been raising the interest rates from their record low levels since last year in its bid to fight the inflation. We know about this. And investors, they have less appetite for the risk when the money available to them becomes expensive due to the higher rates. So this weighted on the technology startups, the primary clients of the Silicon Valley Bank, because it made their investors more risk averse. And clients, they face the cash crunch. So as higher interest rates, they cause the market for initial public offerings to shut down for many startups and made the private fundraising more costly. Some Silicon Valley Bank clients, they started pulling their money out to meet their liquidity needs. And this culminated in the Silicon Valley Bank looking for ways this week to meet its customers' withdrawals. So that's there, and it sells bonds at a loss. So the fund to fund the redemption, Silicon Valley Bank, it sold around $21 billion bond portfolio consisting mostly of the US treasuries. So that was sold at a loss. So these were the main reasons why the bank failed. Coming to Financial Express. So Elon Musk says that I'm open to the idea of buying the Silicon Valley Bank, and banks, financial tech firms, they come to the aid of domestic startups, help move funds from the US banks by creating the Nostro accounts. So Nostro accounts, obviously, they are different from the Vostro accounts that we've discussed. So you need to keep this difference in mind and do not get confused. So SVB's collapse impact to be minimal. And with the abrupt demise of the Silicon Valley Bank, the biggest in more than a decade, Indian banks as well as the fintechs like Razorpay, they have reached out to the domestic startups to set up the Nostro accounts overnight to remove funds from the Silicon Valley Bank and other banks in the US. So a Nostro account refers to an account that a bank holds in a foreign currency in another bank. However, the movement of the funds from the Silicon Valley Bank will take time. And as reported earlier, US banking regulators, they took over the Silicon Valley Bank to protect depositors, and the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, it only insures the bank deposits of up to rupees 2,50,000. And clients, they having deposits higher than this figure, they may have to wait for an insolvency process. So here you also need to know about how much is the insurance amount in India. So climate change, equality, heritage, these are the new focus areas in the art of giving. So new age entrepreneurs donating to the emerging causes. And while historically preferred sectors such as education and healthcare, they continue to be supported. Now we are seeing that new age entrepreneurs, they are now beginning to focus on underrepresented causes within these sectors, including life skills, teacher training, special needs education, tuberculosis, palliative care, eye care, and cancer care, among others. So this is as per the latest Indian Philanthropy Report 2023, which is co-created by the management consultation firm Brain and Company and the Dasra, which is a strategic philanthropic organization. So several of these intergeneration and now generation funders are also diversifying their giving portfolios to include emerging areas such as arts, culture, and heritage, and others comprises 36%. They are supporting livelihood enhancement and skill development. Need to work in mission mode to help the artisans. So last post-budget webinar, Prime Minister said that he underlined the need for working in a time-bound mission mode to help the artisans and persons associated with small businesses become part of the value chain. And for this, we will have to work in a time-bound mission mode. Apart from that, we also have the PM Vishwakarma Yojana, which is aimed at hand-holding of the artisans and people associated with the small businesses besides preserving the nation's rich traditions. So the government, the Prime Minister said, will provide a holistic institutional support to every Vishwakarma. Vishwakarma is an artisan, to ensure that they get access to easy loans, skilling, technical support, digital empowerment, brand promotion, marketing, and raw material. So the objective of the scheme is to develop traditional artisans and craftsmen while preserving their rich tradition. So lastly, coming to Indian Express, let's see what else important things do we have and what have we missed. So process, patience, and play, says Shubman Gill, and the art of constructing an innings. So this is also applicable for the civil services examination. Process things, have patience, and then play in the examination. So Indian Air Force inducting in-house system to identify friendly forces in the combat. So mission capability upgrade with more emphasis on future joint battles and the military opting for more indigenous weapon systems. This homegrown solution is expected to benefit all the users in a joint battle space by providing real-time combat identification. It will improve the mission execution capabilities and reduce weather-linked accidents. So this is the new technology is the Vayu-Link system. So it can avert the Budgam like fratricide and give real-time data. So June deadline is approaching and 20 lagging smart cities told to speed up the projects. Government offers help to 6 northeastern cities, Andhra, Kerala, and Goa capitals. And Surat and Agra are the top achievers. So ahead of the June deadline of the smart cities mission, the 20 smart cities that have completed the lowest number of projects envisaged as part of the program, they have been asked to speed up their work. So this has always been a problem for India, that we lack and we are very slow when it comes to implementation of the projects. So be aware, be smart, and be prepared. So disaster management is no longer just a government's job, but it has become a model of sabka prayas. So we're also having an exhibition on building the local resilience in a changing climate. This is also the theme this year, and 100 stalls of various organizations on disaster risk reduction by NDMA, NIDM, NDRF, scientific institutions, private sector, and various sectors, states, they are a display. And so there's going to be a common alerting protocol, which is alerting the nation before disaster strikes, specialized rescue and relief equipment, innovative technology like Garuda Aerospace on a display there. So be aware, be smart, and be prepared, even applicable to the civil services examination. So it is disappointing that RBI has joined the cheerleaders. According to RBI's February bulletin, the Indian economy will decouple from macroeconomic projections of the current vintage and also from the rest of the world. So further, according to RBI, the budget for 2023-24 is the instrument of decoupling and raising India's growth prospects. This is from the RBI that finds itself unable to decouple from the Fed on the monetary policy. So we also talked about that the SBI's Ghosh, even he's saying about decoupling with the US Fed as far as the repo rate hikes is concerned, because it is important to look into the things and how it is basically faring at the national level. So that is much more important. And reality check, the economy is facing strong headwinds, recession, inflation, tight monetary policies, protectionism, and high fuel prices in the advanced economies. And obviously, Russia-Ukraine war, then sanctions that disrupt the supply chains, domestic inflation, rising interest rates and EMIs, loss of jobs, unemployment, and political uncertainty. And no amount of brave talk will hide these realities. So the outlook for 2023-24 is not bright. So we have already seen Mount Merapi. You can have a look, closer look at this picture. A volcano in Indonesia, it erupts. So renewable subsidies and higher tariffs on coal to result in lower emissions in India by 2030. So combining the renewable subsidies and higher tariffs would lower the emissions by nearly 1/3 in India. So 40% is the total greenhouse gas emissions to increase by 2030. 14% is to decrease the coal imports by 2030 and 2.5% reduction in pollution. So customer centricity is essential for the fintechs. So the finance ministry has started daily monitoring of the revenue receipts, including the tax collections as well as the expenditure beginning 1st of March, with an aim to keep the fiscal deficit in check during the current fiscal. And although government is expected to meet the revised target of the revenue estimates, meeting rupees 50,000 crore target from the disinvestment receipts could be a challenge. And according to the officials, the daily monitoring of the tax and the non-tax revenue collections will help the government in taking timely corrective actions wherever it is needed. So that's all for today. Thank you for joining in Sarkari, and you'll be also getting the PDF link in the description box. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe to it if you're finding it helpful and useful, and if you're following us every single day. And also hit the like button for this video and share the video as much as possible. Thank you so much for joining us.